Let's welcome Luiz Lima, who will present Death Without Mystery, Workers of the Eternal Life. Luiz was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. In 1990, he moved to the United States, where he then came in contact with Spiritism a few years later. He has been lecturing on Spiritism in both Portuguese and English, and is a member of the Kardec Spirit Renovation Spiritist Center in Coconut Creek, Florida. Luiz holds a bachelor's degree in engineering and currently works in the computer network business. Luiz.
Thank you very much. I had a volunteer that was going to do some demonstration here for us, reality show style, but I think he kind of gets scared. So that's what it is in our society. Death has a very heavy weight. And there are a bunch of reasons why is that. So we want to cover this a little bit, and we want to see what the Spirits tells us about this. So when we think of death in general in our society, especially in the Western civilization, we think of heavy words like these that you see here: pain, weakness, defeat. Defeat actually comes from the medical profession. They feel defeated when they can't save somebody, for example, on a surgery or an operation or something. But all these words here, they are attached to death somehow. And we've been living this thing, incarnation after incarnation. It's not just this life. And we want to investigate this a little bit better. When we look at Spiritism, in the book, What is Spiritism?, Kardec puts a very interesting phrase in there, and this is what it is: death is nothing but the destruction of the material envelope, which is quite contrary of what the picture that we see on the left side. It doesn't have that weight. And he continues: the soul abandons it means the envelope, like a butterfly, leaving its chrysalis. However, it retains its fluidic body. So the fact that the word retains, it changes everything. Retains means I'm carrying over. There's an idea of continuation somehow. And that's exactly what it is. So we want to investigate a little bit why we think of death the way we do. So such a heavy thing, such a heavy price that we pay for. That's how we usually go about. So let's go back in time. Let's go back years and years ago, almost 4,000 years ago. At the time of Moses, when the first revelation comes in place, he brings this idea that death is something very heavy because you're paying for something you did wrong. And that's a punishment. So death comes as a direct punishment of something that was done. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how light your transgression is, how bad your transgression is. That's what death is there for in this perspective. A little later in the history of humanity, we face a slight different approach to death, which is the heaven and hell, which is this idea that at the end of the physical life, someone is going to make a decision for you. It's not even you. Someone is going to make a decision for you, some sort of judgment that comes from outside, and one of these two things is going to happen. You go to hell or you go to heaven. Later on, closer to our times, approaching after Middle Ages, we have the idea of the Inquisition, which brings another idea of something very, very heavy, because it's a lot of blood, it's a lot of massacres and people going to being assassinated. And it's a heavy picture. So, and that's on our minds. We've been living this. We've been seeing these throughout times, throughout our incarnations. And in the modern days, we see materialism as putting a heavy weight on the word, death. Because materialism changes the way we see life. Okay, if we look at if we try to understand life and we look at the perennial questions, what are the perennial questions? Perennial questions are these questions that are going to help us define the difference or what it is, life and death. Can we do this? Yes, we can. Here are 7 of the perennial questions. You can see here on the screen. And let's try to understand the difference between the materialistic view and our view, Spiritist view. So number 1, who am I? For a materialistic view, it's just a body of 70 trillion cells. That's all it is. For us, it's something completely different, immortal spirits. Question number 2, where did I come from? Materialistic, parents, genes, spirit world, completely different perspective. How should I behave once I'm here? How should I behave? It doesn't matter. Materialistic view, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't affect anything. For us, it does matter. We need to follow a modeling guide. Next question, where am I going to? And the idea of the materialistic approach is just go back to nature. That's it, all set. We don't talk about it anymore. Our view is completely different. We go back to our spiritual home. Next question, I died, and then? And the science is going to say, and then what? Because that's what they say. It's a materialistic point of view is, and then what? It doesn't even make sense. The question doesn't even make sense. And for us, it's obviously something different. It's what Kardec calls the errant state, where we're going to go through our problems and learn from the past life that we had, and so and so and so and so, that we've heard so many times throughout the day today. Then the next question is, when I supposedly die, materialistic speaking, a physical body, what do I take with me? And we know we don't take anything from the materialistic point of view. Because how do I know that? Because when I die, my car is still in the garage. I don't take it with me. Everybody sees it. So it's a scientific proof that I don't take it. It's scientific proof that I don't take it. But on the other hand, when you look at our view, it's completely different. What do I take? No, I don't take the car. I don't take the house. I don't take any of that. But I take my knowledge and my exchange of emotions and experiences. And the last question is, how is it to die? The death process itself. And science is going to say, it's the same for everybody. It's just the same. It's a bunch of 70 trillion cells. That's it. But for us, it's something completely different. It depends on our level of evolution, how we lived our lives, and a whole bunch of different things that we heard throughout the day today. So when you look at these two columns, obviously, we're not facing the same answers. And because of this, okay, because we are so used to our materialistic view, let's see what it is in general in our society. So I go to my account and I look at my materialistic view, and this is what I find out. My life is limited to this lifetime. That's it. When I die, that's it. I have no visibility past death because I only live one lifetime, okay? My happiness is based on physical things, and that's a big problem in our society. Just think about this real quick. I don't want to go off the subject, but just real quick. If happiness is based on matter, physical things, matter is limited. So that makes happiness limited. So just for visualize a quick example, let's just say that it is the size of this desk here. Okay, so that's happiness. All the matter that we can get together is the size of this thing. If somebody is happy, automatically, I can be fully happy because somebody took a piece of this thing. The more people I see around me that are happier, the less happy I am automatically because of this view. To a point where I need to start killing those who are happy so I can be happy. It's a sad picture, but we see this every day on CNN, okay? I'm unable to comprehend human justice because it's only one lifetime. There's no transgression of any sort in a past life or anything like this. So the materialistic view puts a limit, puts boundaries on the definition of death. They are very complicated to comprehend. So let's try to understand from another point of view what it means. So we go through a physical birth, we incarnate, we live our lifetime here, we go through a death process, we go into errant state, and we come back, reincarnate again. That's what John was just saying, just explaining to us. So it seems to be an easy thing, but the thing is, I need to understand what this death means. I need to zoom on this thing, on this passage from incarnate to discarnate, and I want to see what happens in there, okay? So let's try to do this. First of all, this is not a set point. It's a process. It is a process. We don't have, even being materialistic, we can tell it's a process. Some people suffer in hospital beds for days, for years before they actually are considered clinically dead. So even from that point of view, we know it's a process. Now, when we look at the materialistic view from our side here, our materialistic view, not our side spiritist, our incarnate side, we see this from the left to the right. Okay? So we can trespass that wall and see the other side. Certain other entities can see from the other side. These are the discarnates. So wouldn't it be interesting if these other discarnates would come to us and tell us, this is what you're going to have? Would it change anything? Think about this. You're going to go to a movie, okay? And the movie is a thriller. So you're about to get to the movie theater. You're getting there. And then you meet a friend. And your friend says, oh, you're going to go see this movie. Oh, yeah, no. It's a great movie. Go for it. Mr. A is the killer. Does it change your perspective? Does it change the way you see the movie? It does. If you watch a movie first time, and at the very end, there's a twisted end that you thought Mr. A was the assassin or the killer. At the very end, last 3 minutes of the movie, you find out it's Mr. B. Wow, what a surprise. Then you're going to see the movie again. Do you see it the same way you saw before? No. It changed your perspective. So when we are fed from information from the spirits on the other side, it changes completely the way we live. So it sounds like bizarre, but it's like death changes life. The knowledge of that is what changes life. So when we try to understand a little bit more about life, it gets more complicated. Because if you want to think about this, when am I dead? When is somebody dead? Okay? If you go back many, many, many years ago, the only way to tell was you put your ear on the guy's chest, and you wouldn't hear anything, and you say, he's dead. This guy is dead because I don't hear anything. That's many, many centuries ago. And then we go to the next level. We got more equipment now. So now the doctor can just try to get some better information for all purposes using equipment. And he's going to listen to it and going to say, no, it's still there. No, it's not there now. This guy's dead. But then science complicated itself because with technology, we are now able to detect heart activity, which not necessarily you can listen to. And then when do we die? So it changed again. So science now says, oh, it's when there's no activity, when that line is flat. And then we go, well, how about EEG? Oh, yeah, no, let's change the answer again. It's not when the heart is flatlined. It's when the brain is flatlined. There's going to be another something that we're going to find and technology is going to bring to us that's going to change the answer again. So we are moving. This is what I want to bring to you. We are moving that line, that thin line. This is a live person. This is a dead person. It's being moving. And it's being moving because we are being guided by a whole different set of entities, not incarnates, that are making us find out all these discoveries. So going back to that picture, when you look at this process, it is complicated because science is going to say at one point, this guy is dead during the process. But we are going to say he's dead clinically, but not discarnate yet. It is not the same thing. We, Spiritists, use the word dead to comply with what Daniel said. We need to communicate with the world. If we say the word discarnate to everybody out there, it's going to be very confusing. First of all, we're going to have to explain to everybody else every time we say the word. So we use the word dead as a general, generic, non-spiritist or even religiously attached word. We use it just because it's the way we communicate. But if you think about it, it's not the same thing. I can be dead and not discarnate. I can be still my perispirit, can be attached to my physical body, to the flesh. So I am dead because I flatlined on my brain activity, but I'm not discarnate. That puts another challenge because now we have not only too many answers from the scientific side, but we have another one, which is not even equal to any of those. So we have something called I'm not incarnate or discarnate. So let's take a look of what science considers death. This is official word from science, not mine, okay? Death, the irreversible cessation of all vital functions, especially as indicated by permanent stoppage of the heart, respiration, and brain activity, the end of life. Meaning, flat line. If you flat line on brain activity, that's it, dead. Now, what does, you see, we're trying to find the line between life and death. So we already know what is dead from the science. So let's say what the science says about life before the line. I don't see the answer there. The quality that distinguishes a vital and functional plant or animal from a dead body. I'm sorry, I just don't see the definition there. Do you see the problem? Science does not define life because life is not matter. They can't define. They don't touch that. It is not defined. Automatically, if you can't define life, you can't define death. Right? So how come we act, we materialists in our society, our materialistic people in a society, how come they wanted to take a certain action? It doesn't even make any sense. So these two things cannot be separated. If you cannot define for me what is death, you cannot define what life is. Okay? And why is it so hard to define? Because it's just one thing. Death is a phenomenon. Being this one part of life. It's just a phenomenon. It's nothing extra, nothing different than that. If we were to search about for information, Spiritist information on death, okay, you come up with several things. I took two of them right here, and there are two great books, okay? Chronologically speaking, the bottom one comes first, Heaven and Hell, Allan Kardec, and in 1946, Workers of the Life Eternal by our great friend. He's like an uncle now, right? Andre Luiz, he brings so much information. He's like that good uncle that brings all the goodies that we want. That's what he is. So let's take a look at what Kardec says in 1865, based on the spirits, obviously. In chapter, as you see here, chapter 2, the chapter is divided in two items. These are the items: the causes of fear of death and why Spiritists are not afraid of death. So he goes at length. I'm not going to tell you what it is because you need to read it, right? But he says something very interesting here. The fear of death, therefore, results from the lack of knowledge about the future life. Now, go back to the movie. When somebody comes to you and says, yeah, the killer is Mr. A, that doesn't apply anymore. We have that. So we have that. We got past that point. We Spiritists, we got past that point. And now let's take a look at the first book here, Workers of the Life Eternal, which is, by the way, a great book. And this, let me just tell you quickly what this book is. It's a book where Andre Luiz is part of a group of four aides. He's on an aid expedition of 4 spirits. What they're going to do is they're going to help dying people to discarnate. They're going to help them to detach from flesh. It's a very complicated thing. Okay, the book has 5 stories about when they help 5 people. I'm just going to concentrate on one of them because we don't have time, and you're going to read the book anyway. So the name of this particular one is Joaquin Cavalcante. Okay, let me just tell you, in life, okay, during his lifetime, Andre Luiz just gives us a very quick a grasp of what he was during his life. And here you have some information. So he was a very good man. He didn't care for anything material, to the point that his family thought he was just a religious fanatic. He was Catholic, and they abandoned him. The family didn't want to see him anymore, so he had a broken marriage and everything else. At the end of life, he had to undergo through a very delicate surgery on his digestive system, and he's not going to resist, so he's going to die from it. The spirits that are coming to help him, the expedition in which Andre Luiz is one of them, is there to help him. So they already know that the surgery is not going to work and he's going to die. But the thing is, he's in bed in the hospital, and he keeps saying and repeating many times that he has to have his wife, his ex-wife, with him because he wants to apologize for a behavior in the past. And he doesn't even know his ex-wife is already discarnate. So, but he keeps insisting and insisting, which makes it more difficult for the 4 spirits in the expedition to help him get out of the flesh, because he's attached to the flesh really hard. So how does the thing develops? So we see here, just put a few pieces of information here so you can follow. So his digestive system is not responding. Okay, his body is already smelling bad, and he's with the idea that he wants to see his wife. That makes it very hard for André Luiz and his team to help him detach from flesh. So in sensing that it was difficult, he calls his priest, who was his friend from a long time. So he calls his priest and he explained to the priest, well, I have a problem with my ex-wife. I need her here because I need to apologize. And the priest is not even interested. He's not even listening. You smell too bad. And he just leaves. So he goes into a kind of a revolt state, which makes things worse, obviously. And then when things are worse, the doctor comes in, looks at him and says, oh, poor guy. We need to do something with this guy. We need to give him an injection. So the doctor is about to, it's considering doing euthanasia, and he's going to do it. So look at the situation. The spirits, the 4 spirits, André Luiz and his team, they're trying to pull him out of flesh. And this guy is doing everything with the help of his doctor to stay in flesh. So it's very complicated. How does it unfold? So what we see is that the spiritual team has to start creating, opening vessels. So blood comes out and his condition deteriorates, because in doing so, look at this, in doing so, he will be more prone to connect to the spiritual world. He's so fleshy, he's so matter right now that they need to do something, so he starts detaching. So they provoke a series of, they open some small vessels throughout his intestine. By then, the spirit team, André Luiz and his team, sense that he's already now a little bit more connected to the spirit world, and now it makes sense to bring his wife, which ex-wife who was discarnate, to talk to him. And he sees her, he apologizes, and she apologizes too. And for him, that was a good thing, but he's still attached to the flesh. Even so, it wasn't all of that he was waiting for. He was still a very materialistic person, very attached to the flesh. So the doctor says, well, there's no way. This guy is suffering too much. I'm just going to end that suffering. And he gives him what the doctor says, injection of compassion. So that's euthanasia. So if you go back a little bit, if you think a little bit about what I said about being dead and discarnate, you see the interference of this? Because all this does is move the dead line, but it doesn't move the discarnate line. It's a process. First you are dead, and then you discarnate. So the doctor, unknowingly, obviously, didn't know the damage that he was doing. Once he took the anesthesia, or the euthanasia took place, the numbness of the cells doesn't let him, the dying guy, Cavalcante, he doesn't let him to get out of the flesh anymore. He gets glued to these cells, to these several cells. So now the spiritual team cannot pull him out anymore. They have to wait until these cells are detachable, so they can pull out his perispirit and detach from flesh, and that takes 20 hours. So that's 20 hours after all of what he was going through already. He was in the hospital suffering really bad for 4 days. This is the 5th day, which turned into a 6th day because of the euthanasia. So you see the book, I'm just telling you the story very superficially, obviously, but there's a lot to learn from this one story. The book has 5, okay? It is a great book. There's a lot of information here that we should be concentrating on, that we should be learning from. We saw today, throughout the day, that André Luiz has a lot of work that all it does is gives us the information from the other side, the other perspective from the other side, so we can change our life. We can change our life by knowing about death. It's not a flat line. You're alive here, you're dead here. That's not what it is. That's the old materialistic view. So we can change. We ourselves, we can change by knowing what we can face. When we know what the process is going to be, by example, and when we know what the afterlife is going to be, mystery doesn't apply to death anymore. You just live them. Just live mystery. It doesn't apply anymore, because mystery is something that we don't know. We are probably afraid of, doubtful about. When you know, it doesn't apply anymore. So all the work of André Luiz is there to tell us what it is after that. So we grasp all this information. We come back, mentally speaking, to our life, and we redo the course of our lives. One of the great men in this country, President Lincoln, he once said something very interesting. Because for us, before I say what he says, for us, imagine that we go out there in the library or the bookstore and we just pick up the entire André Luiz collection. It's a lot of information. So we're going to go like, wow, I can't take this. It is too much. So we need to go easy. And this is what he says, Abraham Lincoln. The best thing about the future is that it comes only one day at a time. Now take this and put into the Spiritist perspective. Doesn't it change everything? It changes everything. The one day at a time in the future is the one day at a time that I'm doing today. What I did today is going to reflect in one of my days in the future. What I did yesterday will also, and so and so and so and so. So when we know this, when we get to learn all of this, just like I said, the word mystery doesn't apply anymore. It doesn't come with the word death attached anymore. Okay? So there's a lot of us to learn, a lot to learn and a lot to reflect upon, because we can read these books and it's a nice story and so. That's not what it is. These are not romances or romance style book. These are study books that we have to learn from, and several times over we read the same passage, the same thing. Some of them are complicated, some of them are very challenging to our understanding. Some of them use a lot of, just like this one, a lot of genetics information, biology information. So at times we don't know because it's not our line of work, it's not something that we have interest in. So we need to ask around, oh, what is this? What is this thing about cells and that? Because if we don't do this, we're not going to understand what's being said. We don't need to become a biologist or a doctor to understand this. You don't have to go this far, okay? But we need to create the habit of facing these books, not as romance-style books. These are study books. So if you look at the entire collection of books here, okay, this is in publishing order. Okay, some of them are in Portuguese, the title, because they're not yet translated into English. So we are here on number 4. Okay, there's a lot more to read. This book itself, it's very challenging to read because he goes down to the cell level of what happens during the discarnation process. He goes to the cell level, what happens to every cell, what happens to a lot of the functions in the body, things that are not working anymore, vessels stop working, hormones are not working anymore. It is a deep book in that concept. Now, if you want to read everything else, because this is number 4, if you go in order, okay, you can still read number 4 and you don't have to die. I know you're dying for it, but you don't have to die to read the other books. Even if you wanted to, you can't, because death does not exist. It's just a mystery that we created from the past, okay? But we're not taking that home. Thank you very much.